Hello, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Jacquelyn. How's life?
Life is good after we've tried to spend some time troubleshooting my random Wi-Fi issues and hence the different background than normal. My office was not working for some reason today, but
No, it's a nice background. You've got a little mirror behind you. It looks very church-like, if I may.
yes. What is it, like a halo? There's a special word for that. What is it called?
A halo.
No. Brilliant, Paul.
Frame.
Frame, yes. I'll have to think about what my brain is.
Now people are going to laugh through the whole thing, seeing you in
Just because I
front
look
of
like
the halo.
Well, what's worse is that it's cracked. It's a cracked mirror, and I always try to ignore that part.
Well, no, I can't. I wouldn't have noticed that if you hadn't pointed it out. Now I can look at nothing but the crack in the mirror.
Sorry, Paul, and sorry, everybody else. I'll take us through last week's headlines to distract us from the horrible crack behind me. The cover last week was the meat of the story is that there was a phase 3 trial that came out in February in Nature Medicine, and it showed a staggering, like crazy improvement in OS and PFS when immunochemotherapy was given before 3 p.m. versus after 3 p.m. in non-small cell lung cancer patients. So that's there in February, and then on June 24th, it was retracted. And yeah, this was a story that I had just kind of been watching as like a consumer of science news, but I was able to kind of talk to people and get a deeper understanding of it in the story, and that is what we will dive into later in the podcast. Our story 2 was written by Paul. It was about OMB's plan to increase political control of science and basically how that is playing out on Capitol Hill. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more as well. We've covered this proposed rule from OMB before, and this is sort of a follow-up, but also like what's happening, in response to this legislatively on the Hill. And then we had 2 really cool guest editorials. I really impartial to both of them. I enjoyed them both. The first one was Saving Western Kenya's Pediatric Blood Cancer Patients. And it was talking about how the introduction of a new technology, flow cytometry, really is changing the diagnostic landscape of pediatric cancers, blood cancers in Western Kenya. And it was just a really cool example of how access can really significantly change outcomes. And obviously that's a lesson we know, but just really, really neat story. And then the third one, the second guest editorial was about AI. And I feel like that's something that we want to write about more and stuff, but obviously it's booming, it's growing. We don't want to overstep our knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. But the author of this seems to really have a very deep understanding of sort of the AI world. And it's just a very cool, nerdy AI story. It talks about the different levels of autonomy and sort of what they each kind of might mean for the field of science. Ideally, he says that the future is in level 3 autonomy, where they basically are their own little self-driven researchers, PIs, that don't need as much human oversight or direction. But obviously, he, of course, goes on to say at the end that any results and things like that need to be validated by traditional means. And then I do want to mention that we had a pretty cool sponsored article last week. Normally, I don't necessarily bring those up, but that one was really neat, and I would suggest reading about it. It was talking about the Journal of Clinical Oncology and sort of how to address the fact that clinical trials are going on for so long, and how to report on that and things like that. And then we also, I will just say, I know this is going on for a little bit right now, but the cancer policy had some pretty interesting stories in there as well, including one talking about FDA halting the public release of complete response letters in response to a citizen petition. So lots to read and learn about. Life moves fast. It's fierce, persistent, determined. At City of Hope Cancer Center, they are too. Their groundbreaking research and discoveries have impacted millions of lives globally. They're moving science forward with the hope, passion, and speed every diagnosis deserves for a cancer-free future. City of Hope, pursuing cancer cures at the speed of life. Learn more at www.cityofhope.org. We can start with chronotherapy, Paul?
Yeah, it was just such a cool story because we kind of dove into an issue we kind of don't really normally think about, and it involves a retraction by nature medicine. Retractions are always a lot of fun to cover. They're kind of tragedies for the PIs and sometimes even for the journals. It was a really, really fascinating story, right? Because, well, I'm going to shut up and let you talk.
No, I appreciate the break after going through the headlines. Yeah, the story was really interesting. It started like 2 weeks ago, and it was going to be just a kind of a quick hitting B story, just because I was, like I said, I was kind of just interested in this news. I think I was one of the kind of bright-eyed, naive, little like mini scientists, if I can call myself that, that saw the results. And I mean, it was like a 60% improvement. The curves were like, this far apart. It was just like, oh my God, like all you have to do is give someone immunotherapy before 3 p.m. and you can get that type of improvement, like that. I think that I am a little too optimistic, and I also but like, I was taken up when I saw that on social media and on LinkedIn in February. And I kind of suggested it to the team, but like you said, it's not really something that we typically dive into. Chronotherapy is something that none of us really have any expertise on or like too much familiarity with, which, by the way, Paul, you had covered it before, which I think we'll get to later. Yes.
I did, but that was 30 years ago almost.
Isn't it? Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's more. It's more. 1989, so it's 11 plus 26, 37 years ago. How in the hell did I remember? That story is totally beyond me, but it's my own
He
curse.
remembered not only the story, but like the name of the scientist who was involved in like the one trial. It was crazy.
We're off track. This is like Passover at my house. Everybody's off track. Let's get back on track.
So anyway, yes, the study was really exciting. And then it just kind of didn't happen because there was a lot of other news that was more in line with our readership. And obviously it's still a huge, crazy news cycle right now. So then when it came out in June that it was retracted, I was like, oh my gosh, like I would really like to just like write this up. I think there's probably a pocket of our readers who felt kind of similarly, who were really excited about the news and then are now like, oh, that sucks. But kind of like almost, yeah, like it was a little bit too good to be true. Like that it almost, so anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, when I wrote the original story, I had like basically packaged this like perfectly contained B story of just like what happened and, very succinct, short, whatever. And then I had interviews with Jed Wolchuk and Rachel Humphreys, and it just changed everything. And I think I put a lot of the conversations in the story. So I think that it gets communicated through the actual written story as well. But those conversations, I think, really just kind of put the whole story in a different light, sort of just and I know, Paul, you don't love this, but me and Claire were talking about this. I was like, the story became sort of a love letter to the scientific process and the peer review process. And of course, Nature Medicine, you can talk about the challenges of the peer review process, especially with certain journals, blah, 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 whatever. But I don't know, Rachel Humphrey and Jed Wolchuk were both just so optimistic and talking about how, this discussion, this critical thinking, this broad body of scientific literature that you can never just accept as, like blatantly true without thinking critically about it. Rachel Humphrey's comment about Jim Allison being like, this paper is BS, and running to the lab and doing it himself. Obviously not everybody has those resources, but I think it just became really like rousing for me to hear sort of the scientific community respond to something that could have been really amazing and exciting. And then also to have the researchers respond to me. That was another thing that, I was kind of just like waiting on when I was originally writing just that first B story was, I really want to hear from the researchers. And they were, it's in the story. They were like, we surely learned a painful lesson. We made a lot of mistakes, and, it was a lot of like administration stuff, and the details are in the story, but it just, I don't know. It kind of gave me chills, the whole thing of, science wants to work so badly and we can really mess it up. And the body of scientists like comes together and catches it. I don't know. It was rousing for me.
Oh, it's lovely. But actually, can I just take it off track for a moment? You had basically checkpoints, the band of Society of what is it called? Society for Immuno-Oncology.
Yes, it's I don't know if it is a society. I'll look it up. But yes,
it is definitely, yeah. No, do it again. And
Society for
so
Immunotherapy of Cancer. That's what it is.
Right. So Rachel is the singer with this group. Judd Walchuk, in addition to his other credentials, plays the tuba. Well, this is, Checkpoints is a scientific credential.
Literally.
and Jim Allison famously plays the harmonica. So you didn't speak with him, but you really didn't need to. But here's the really interesting thing. When you come up with results, which these folks did, that are really just unbelievably cool, and immediately, in principle, applicable in the clinic. Of course, everybody's going to check them, and if you have any boo-boos in there, they'll find them. So I guess my question with something like that always is the same, and I've done a lot of stories about these kinds of boo-boos and retractions. The question is, the process works, as you say, but sometimes the process really should be prevented from having to work, because if you've got what's the French word, dreck, that should be obviously found in peer review. Just leave the process, let the process concentrate on something bigger, which I think is what we had here. And as you guys were rhapsodizing about
how much we love science,
about all of this, how wonderfully the process worked, my kishkas were grinding. And that's another French word. I'm sorry, but it was really painful. Yes. I probably did chime in and say, "You people are just wrong."
Yes.
But I probably did, or I know I thought that. But really, at what point do you bring in the entire? I mean, like Rachel talks about this, how you throw it out to the community, But I think there's like a hygiene question. What do you throw out to the community? Yeah. There's sometimes you want to spare the community. Yeah. And I don't think, I do believe that in this case we see, it's just my opinion, I think we see a failure of Nature Medicine to properly peer review this thing and save embarrassment to the investigators who sound like reasonable people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the community. I mean, of course, ultimately, it's really sparing the patients the nonsense.
Well, and I'm gonna put like a huge disclaimer that this is just my I'm assuming that I'm missing something big in what I'm about to say, but I think the thing that I was confused about and struggled with, as I was writing the story and had a way better understanding of it. And I would like to continue trying to understand is, why did this study start? If it is true, and just to be clear, I still am not an expert on chronotherapy. I honestly am just I want to understand it better and understand the field better. There are real gaps in my knowledge here. But from the people that I spoke with, it seems like, and also just like the broader coverage of this story, it seemed like, there was pretty weak biological plausibility to be doing this in humans right now. Not to be studying the field, not to be exploring this idea, but, even just like the matchup between circadian, like quote unquote time, or like the spot a person is in their circadian rhythm and the clock time, it's like, how do you actually parse out? It's like there seems to be a huge number of biological questions that still need to be answered. And so to me, my confusion that I was left with was, why was this study allowed to happen? Like, it's that's my less so about. And I mean, Nature Medicine, I think there were questions about, the PFS curve was remarkably smooth, and to me that seems like something that probably a reviewer at a scientific journal would have seen, right? Like referring to your idea about like hygiene, like that's something I'm like, okay, why did they not notice that if that was found so quickly afterwards? But for me, something that and this is what Rachel Humphrey said, and I might be putting words in her mouth a little bit, but what I got from what she said was like, this trial was done, they had this data, like at least the field got to see it, kind of, and that's I think that I'm.
Yeah, negative trials are good, but negative trials is not the same as garbage collecting, or shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You don't. Again, I go back to the question of public health and hygiene.
I mean,
at what point do you do that? It's actually getting back a little bit to the history of the thing. As we were editing the story, I said, can you look up the name Hershevsky, Bill Hershevsky?
Not the spelling.
And I said, how do you spell it? And I kind of ad-libbed the spellings.
Close enough, though. That was amazing. It started with an H.
Oh, no, it came right up. I had it right. But years ago, when I was a young journalist in 1989, this guy, Bill Hershevsky, was just suggesting some of the same stuff. Just change the schedule for when you do all this stuff, and or when you do chemotherapy. And he was probably working with 5FU. I don't remember.
I think so. I think he was. I think I'm almost positive.
I'm not even sure it was, what was it, 5FU leucovorin or levamisole?
Yeah, I think it actually might have just said chemotherapy. I think I'm remembering our conversation about it last week rather than the words.
Yeah. And somehow somebody convinced, I suspect it was Congress, because why else would NCI do it? Convinced Congress to issue to start kind of a pilot program in this, chart to see if there's anything there. Knowing people who were there, they were all probably saying, "Oy," but let's just try it. But what was really cute was that, and I had a conversation with Bill, which I still remembered, obviously, 37 years later, the conversation was that they couldn't find any peer reviewers.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, wait, let me get that part up in the story. It was really good.
Yeah, we'll link to the story, which is really a feat of human memory. This is purely like, oh yeah, it wasn't. There was no way to do a search function on this one.
It says here. I'll quote it. It says, "This is from my story," but then it quotes Paul's, or the story from the Cancer Letter in 1989.
I think it's my story. It had to be my story, because why else would I remember?
Yeah.
We didn't have bylines then, but anyway, that's another matter.
When NCI issued an RFA in 1989 for chronotherapy research, there weren't enough experts in the field to review the applications. And this is the quote: "The Division of Cancer Treatment opened the door for future chronotherapy research with an RFA issued last October. But even that is being threatened by an ironic twist. There are only a handful of investigators in the country who know anything about chronobiology. And most, if not all of them, have submitted applications in response to the RFA. That doesn't leave any scientist knowledgeable in the field to do the review." Which sucks. And the thing, it's just, if they do have something here, and I think that there is, I'm being influenced by Rachel Humphrey. She says, there is nothing. The fact that our bodies have circadian rhythms is as certain as the sun rising. It's like there is biology here, and it's so seductive. Like if we could, you're like, exactly, Jacquelyn. But it's, so and just for the record, the NCI still has a dedicated chronomedicine interest group. It's like there are people doing this. But I hear you, Paul. I think that this is a tricky one. And yeah, I don't know. I think the peer review question has been one that has existed for how long? How would you say? Or the peer review issue, I guess. Forever?
Since well, that gets us into the other
Yeah, there you
story.
go.
Since World War II, when U.S. government got involved in funding science, in medical science as well, but also physics and so forth. So Vannevar Bush is mentioned in the story, in the other story that we did.
Do you want to talk about it, Paul?
But yeah,
We can switch over.
yeah, we can. But let's. Are we done with
Chronotherapy?
this timing issue? Chronotherapy. I think there might be something there, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? And we certainly don't know. But it was also kind of fun to see the process kind of play itself out and say,
Let's talk about your story, Paul.
it's one of those great Washington stories where everybody is very, very upset, and maybe I mean, there's a lot to be worried about. Of course, OMB has published a proposed rule to which everybody should have commented.
They probably did, looking at the numbers.
The numbers were staggering. When I accessed those numbers, it was 110,000 comments. How long will it take to read some of those comments or all of those comments? Who knows? And I hope it takes a long time, but till October 1, when they will try to enact this thing, they really have to kind of have a response. They'd have to at least pretend to have read those comments. And some of these comments are just a few lines, like the first one I quoted, which was actually quite fabulous about how this goes right against everything that the government has done since World War II, which is trust peer review. You don't want to have, I mean, elections have consequences, but ideally not on science. So, I mean, political involvement in science is a catastrophe. It's just, I mean, there's some that happens and some is inevitable, but making it the driving force of science, which is what this would do, is scary. So, I mean, it's kind of like, well, we can keep going forever, but we won't. I think it would be really interesting to look at, well, it became a partisan issue mostly. The Dems are against this proposal, obviously. But on the Republican side, there's Susan Collins, the embattled Susan Collins. And there you really have this kind of a rapidly moving lazy Susan of events. I mean, she's basically was imperiled in the election with Plattner. Then in the great state of Maine,
yes.
Then she. Unrelated to that, I'm sure, because she did what she believes. She objected broke ranks with the party, objected to the OMB proposal, which is really worth a whole lot more after Plattner was self-immolated rather than was emulated or self-emulated. That depends on how you interpret those events or characterize them. But now what is happening is even more interesting, because it's last time I looked at the polls, it looks like that her challengers are even stronger. But of course, they're likely to be at least on the generic ballot, because Plattner was actually kind of suppressing the vote of the Democrats. So if indeed Democrats capture the Senate. But here the question is, then this proposal is dead. The main question in all of this is going to be, how quickly can Congress insert language into the spending bills to make this rule inactive. I mean, to neutralize.
So you think it's going to come to that OMB probably is not going to be listening to these comments and saying, oh, we won't finalize.
They need to rush it through in order to have it active for a while, and then hope that Congress remains where it remains on this. But if Dems capture the House, where that rule is imperiled. If this House and Senate, then the rule is gone, and then it just becomes a question of negotiations between the House and Senate, regardless of what happens. And and if it's all Dems, then it's over. The whole thing's gone. So that's how I see it.
So there's not. I mean, because Susan Collins will, because she's broken rank, it's kind of like in the spending bills, this is going to get resolved. Is that how you're seeing it, or am I missing something?
Yeah, it's going to be resolved in the spending bills eventually. Yeah. And it becomes another matter of, what language do they stick into the... It's probably going to be resolved in the same way that the indirect costs are going to be resolved.
Gotcha. Yeah.
With language in the bills, get the language in. Question is how many weeks or months this is going to be active. I love these predictions because they never come true. But in this case, I'm just riffing from what we see right now in front of us. Those are two stories that were food for thought. I think the follow-up to the story about the reactions to the OMB rule, which we all have to take seriously, of course. Yeah. There's so much at stake. And 110,000 people did. Yeah. We should probably do maybe a dozen of reactions, maybe this week, just as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Highlight them.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's important.
And just get them on record and link to them. And if anybody wants to read them, they should read them.
Yeah.
It's all going to be pretty clear. Like, hey, don't do it. It's silly.
Yeah.
That way clearly lies disaster. When you have politicians dictate science, you get, a place I know pretty well, which is the Soviet Union, where they killed geneticists.
Yeah, literally, and
they literally killed geneticists.
Yeah, no, I say literally as a very like gen whatever, but yeah, like I mean that in as heavy a way as a millennial can say it. It's. I think that
I don't think anybody is going to kill geneticists here, but they certainly won't fund them or something or somebody, or maybe they'll fund geneticists but kill computers. Who knows what? It's just leave the politicians the hell out of it. Let scientists do their work.
You gotta.
I mean, it's not like they've been screwing up.
Well, that's the issue, right? Is it depends on who you ask. I don't think they've been screwing up.
Well, let's just talk about oncology. Look at where we are. Look at those curves in pancreatic cancer.
Yep. Talking to Dr. Wolpen later today. Going to talk more about that. Yeah, I always think about the myeloma curves whenever I think about that. Yeah.
Do you really want a Politico in there talking about what is correct science, what's incorrect science?
Especially when it's so complicated. It's so complicated. It's like you really need to be an expert to understand.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like you get into questions if you're in the Marxist state, geneticists are genetics is un-Marxian or anti-Marxian, for example. And then you need to kill the geneticists. If you're in the Holy Inquisition, which is another example of government control over science, then you gotta do some autodafés. So it's work.
Yeah.
The government really should just keep its hands out of. Yeah. I'm starting to sound like a classical liberal. So,
well, I mean, it's just that they have their own work to do. It's like they have the work of running a government. But the one thing I wanted to ask Paul is, and I know we're going a little bit long, but I am just curious about. I feel like the story that you wrote last week was kind of the first time, at least I have heard from Vogt about this. And I just wondered if you had an impression from what he said and just listening to him and stuff like that, just as like a personal curiosity.
I quoted only his exchange with Rosa DeLauro, which was a lot of fun too, because it was just your basic fist fight, and that's fun.
I can read it. It's well, where does it start?
She slugs him.
Will you commit? She says, will you commit to us here today that you will carry out our spending laws as Congress intended through appropriations and reconciliations as they were enacted or not? And he says, obviously, we will take and make sure that we're spending money where you intend us to spend money. He replied, at the same time, I'm not gonna ... And she says, no, the answer to that then is no. You are not going to spend the money that Congress in a bipartisan way ... Vote said, I didn't say that. Delora said, yes, you did. Yes, proper fist fight.
It's a proper fist fight.
Yes. Okay, gotcha. That's interesting.
Don't overinterpret it or underinterpret it.
Yes. Well, thank you for an awesome chat today, Paul. Definitely covered the gamut. And I will see you next week. Is there anything we missed? Why do I feel like I'm missing something?
I'm sure we missed a lot.
Yes.
But
Go read the stories.
It's a great time to be a journalist.
Yes, it is a great time. That's what I'm missing. That's it.
We missed the closing line.
Yes. All right. Well, see you next week, Paul, and listen to you next week too.
See you next week.